You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hurricane Beryl strengthening as it closes in on landfall, which is expected very shortly. 2 a.m. Central Daylight Time. We're giving the storm 85 mph winds based on some of the recon data that we saw earlier, and an estimated pressure of 982 millibars indicated by the drops on National Hurricane Center, just a little bit below that at 80 miles per hour and 982 at their update statement. Based on current trends, we are expecting landfall to occur at about 25 to 3 as it stands. That may change as the storm draws closer. It is a mere 14 miles from its landfall at this stage, and that would be right on Matagorda, the settlement, as it moves onto the barrier island and then starts to move inland and probably very close to Bay City in the next few hours. You see that little shape that's just been drawn on that map as we look at radar, and that is a brand new flash flood warning that was issued at 1:42 for southern Brazoria and northeastern Matagorda County. Not too surprising. But Doppler radar and automated rain gauges indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain. Between 2 and 4 inches have fallen. Additional rainfall amounts of 2 to 4 inches possible in the warned area, and flash flooding ongoing or expected to begin shortly. So that's a flash flood warning in effect right now as this hurricane draws closer to land. In the studio, my name is Nathan Foy, and we'll have coverage on this storm as it makes its landfall, hopefully this hour. I say hopefully because we want to get this thing over and done with, don't we? And then probably a little bit beyond that as it moves inland. The National Hurricane Center are producing update statements every hour. This was the latest track forecast. Of course, not too much to talk about with regards its track anymore. Pretty much everything is all figured out. Warnings still in effect right now then. A storm surge warning for Mesquite Bay to Sabine Pass, including Matagorda Bay and Galveston Bay. Hurricane warning for the Texas coast of Mesquite Bay northward to Port Bolivar. And tropical storm warning for the Texas coast south of Mesquite Bay to Port Mansfield, and north of Port Bolivar to Sabine Pass. This is supposed to be a Galveston webcam that we are looking at along the beach there, and yes, there are the latest conditions. So quite a lot of heavy rainfall there at this time, and I imagine some pretty strong winds. We don't have any we couldn't find any cameras in Matagorda County, so we're having to stick with Galveston for the closest cameras to the storm. They will be getting tropical storm force winds. Galveston should avoid quite easily the hurricane force winds. I know that we also had a camera the other day that was near San Luis Pass. Well, that one went down, so that would have been the closest camera, but we don't have it. So we've got Galveston. We've got 2 cameras in Galveston, as a matter of fact. Here's the other one, if we can get that to play. This one is looking more at the city. A very high position on that camera as well, looking in at it right now. There it is, with lots of heavy rain there. And the other camera that we had that was really close, well, close to Galveston at any rate, was the one at Bayou Vista. There it is, but you can't see very much. Just about make out the horizon there with lights in the distance, but we can't see very much on that camera. I'm joined by Maury, who... I think you're pretty crazy, aren't you? Getting up at 1 in the morning to join us on this live stream. Did you sleep?
Yeah, I slept. I slept a little bit.
Even crazier.
I'm currently looking for webcams in the region. It doesn't look like there's any right now. However, I bet there is I bet there is a few picture cams. So those aren't perfect, but they at least provide pictures on the environment every few minutes.
And let
So
me read out the 2 a.m. update statement that they made. It's nearing the middle Texas coast and expects to make landfall within the next few hours. I think at this rate it will be within this hour. Conditions deteriorating with dangerous storm surge and flash flooding. Sustained tropical storm force winds and hurricane force wind gusts have already been reported along the coast. A weather flow station located at Matagorda Bay recently reported a sustained wind of 60 miles per hour and a gust of 75 miles per hour. Recon are, of course, in and around the storm as well. They got some really interesting strong winds earlier on, which were indicative of an 85 mile per hour storm, although those readings were about 2 hours ago now. More recently, they haven't got as strong winds in the same quadrant, so that's interesting. They only got, the second time around, they only got 70 to 75 knot flight level winds with nearly 70 knot SFMRs. That would be more towards 80 miles per hour. They're going to be making a pass into the northeastern side pretty soon as well. And then that is probably going to be the final time that they'll be able to get into that northeastern quad, if they can even get there. But I expect that that on radar you see this. Let me just get this paused. This big red band that's been moving in the last few frames. That probably contains the strongest winds of this hurricane, with a secondary strong area in this little area here. Both of those definitely hurricane force winds in both of those zones that I've circled. But want to also point out, maybe some better news, southwest side not looking very good. Look at that, big area there that's looking very ropey indeed, and possibly still some dry air to the rescue perhaps, really interfering with the southwest side of that eye wall, looking very weak on that side. Unfortunately, that's the side that's facing away from land, and so the coast is going to be getting pounded by some of these, this inner eye wall right now, as we continue to watch it swirl towards land. Indeed, if we zoom right in, you will see that some areas are now in the eye already. You can see part of that barrier island, I think that's still Matagorda Island, that's inside the eye. Let me just get an exact location on that. Matagorda Peninsula, they have an airport on there apparently. I can't imagine it's much of a developed airport, more like an airstrip probably. But that will be inside the eye, as will Pierce Field further on towards the west, another little airport there along the coast. Obviously I don't know the area that well, but I can't imagine they're much more than landing strips, since there's actually no real road access on that peninsula. And just off to the northeast, you'll have the area that goes out onto the coast from Matagorda. I'm not sure if that locality has a name, but that is just inside, just about to enter the eye as well. Moving on towards the headland. But right now, this is what we're looking at. Whether you're staying up the night or whether you've woken up to see this, I'm of the latter, because I got my sleep in early to get this coverage running. But we're looking at it here, and we're getting very close to landfall, earlier than we were thinking. We were expecting it would probably be closer to 5 a.m., but there was this possibility that it could have been as early as 2 a.m. if it kept going more quickly. And lo and behold, it looks like it will be this hour that we'll get the landfall, according to current trends. It has just gone now within 20 kilometers, which is about 13 miles, I think. About 13 miles away from land, and its current movement is 15 miles per hour. That's based on radar in the last 6 hours. So over that period, it's been moving at an average of 15. So we await further info. Recon, they're not going northeast. I do beg my pardon on what I said earlier. They're going to be doing southeast to northwest on their next pass. It's just the one plane that's in the storm at this time, AF306, and they've been getting plenty of passes already. They've done 5 during this mission, and in that time they went from 987 to 982. We're very thankful this storm didn't strengthen further. It easily could have done. This could have been a Category 2 that we were looking at. It could even have been high-end on towards Category 3 according to the HWRF model, but for once, unlike most of the rest of this storm's life, the HWRF has proven here to be wrong, and we're happy about that. But it is still a substantial Category 1 hurricane, which is throwing very heavy rain and wind over the landfall, or soon-to-be landfall area. As we take a look back at the camera at Galveston, you can see a vehicle really going at pace along the beach there. Oh no, it's along the road there. So that's just a little bit of traffic. I thought that was a beach at the first time I was looking at it, but there you can see a couple of cars going along the main road on the right hand side of that picture, and you can see I think I saw quite a oh, there's a big power flash actually by the looks of things in the distance.
In Galveston?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't, well, it looks like a power flash, a big bright blue light.
Yeah, I mean, that might be power flash.
So perhaps the grid is under duress here on the coast at Galveston, but in general the conditions are looking, you know, it could be worse here. Tropical storm force winds probably over this area. I expect you'll get maximums of 60 miles per hour sustained. Can't really see the water from where we're looking. It's just off to the right. Perhaps you might be able to see a couple of waves moving in if you look very carefully. But along that road we'll be looking there too to see if there's signs of storm surge. Of course, in this area it could be up to 7 feet. As we know from history, it doesn't take a huge amount of storm surge to inundate Galveston Island. Latest radar update, we are now indicating that the center of the eye is just 16 kilometers away from the Matagorda Peninsula. Oh yes, you can see in those car headlights there, the wind really blowing along in front of them. So 10 miles away from landfall here at this point on the Matagorda Peninsula, and then there's a little bit of a gap in the bay, and then we'll be looking at a second landfall in very short shrift after that in the mainland of Matagorda County. So Galveston is our closest camera point right now. Here's another view, if we can get it running again. Stop starting all the time. Here is another view of the city, and again getting heavy rain. This camera a very elevated position, so I'm surprised it's so still, in fact, because there must be some significant winds up at that height. We know because Recon were getting, earlier on, they were getting hurricane force flight level winds just a few miles away from, well, maybe about 10 miles away from Galveston is where they were getting hurricane force winds at altitude. Recon are going in again right now. They're just about to pass through the eye. Got a 987.2 extrapolated, but they're not fully there yet. They have just received 75 knot flight level winds on the southeast side, but only SFMRs of 55 knots. So a bit of a discrepancy there. But they'll be through the eye any minute. And that again is AF306, and hopefully some more drops on data. This may well be the last pass that they can do before this landfall. I'm not sure they'll be able to squeeze another one in at the rate of movement. But right now, it's of our belief here that we're going to see landfall this hour. It is currently about 10 miles off the coast of the Matagorda Peninsula. And in the last hour, a flash flood warning has been issued for southern Brazoria and northeastern Matagorda County. They're saying that 2 to 4 inches of rain have fallen already, and they're expecting an additional 2 to 4 inches in the warned area. Flash flooding ongoing or expected to begin shortly. Places in that: Lake Jackson, Southern Angleton, Bay City, Freeport, Clute, West Columbia, Sweeney, Surfside Beach, Richwood, Brazoria, Jones Creek, Oyster Creek, Southern Bailey's Prairie, Wild Peach Village, Sargent, and Van Vleck. And it also includes the following low water crossings: southbound State Highway 35 at Linville Bayou, State Highway 288 at Oyster Creek, Grace Street at Cottonwood Creek, Hammond Road at Cottonwood Creek, County Road 521 at the Brazos River, State Highway 36 at the Brazos River, County Road 2611 at the San Bernard River, and State Highway 35 at Linville Bayou. Turn around, don't drown. That's if anyone's out there in the first place, which really, I'm not sure why you would at 2 in the morning during a hurricane, but I imagine some people are. Well, we saw a couple of cars going by in Galveston.
So, I do want to note that there is this small system near Galveston that could be producing maybe a weak water spout, a tropical water spout.
Oh, has this camera died? I think this camera's died. Go ahead.
Just off the coast here of Galveston, you can see a little bit of rotation right here. Of course, we do have to pay attention to this tropical tornado threat, as they usually occur on the northeastern side, like this one is right now. And you can see that the storm has a bit of history of producing some rotation, a lot of little rotations with this storm. But as they approach the coast there of Jamaica Beach, so we do have to watch out for tornado potential with this storm.
Yeah, interesting. Certainly a little something going on there. Soviet Boy, interesting name. Thanks for your support. Will San Antonio get anything? It's looking less and less likely now for San Antonio. In fact, their chance of storm force winds are very low, if I recall. I mean, they've dropped down below 5%, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that info. But certainly the risk has greatly declined. Yeah, it's going to miss you in San Antonio. And it's the dry side as well, so I'm not even sure you'll get any rain. If you do, it will only be marginal amounts. So San Antonio really in the clear with this storm, and Austin pretty much the same as well. Do we think there's still a chance it manages to sneak in a Category 2? No, because Recon depicted winds, if anything, are going back down. But right now, it's probably 85 miles per hour or thereabouts. Don't forget, National Hurricane Center still only at 80 miles per hour. We think it's a bit stronger based on the Recon data earlier. But it is getting closer to land still at this point, and we expect landfall very soon. Indeed, some of the Matagorda Peninsula already in the eye. We're struggling to pinpoint the exact location of the eye right now, but it's somewhere between 10 and 14 miles off the coast. And as you can see, it is doing a little bit of oscillating at this point. What it is also doing, though, it looks like that south side of the eye wall is starting to break up. So perhaps we're seeing the storm pulling apart a little bit. And of course, there's some extra stuff going on in the eye as well. You can see a very tight rotation near the center So it's not a cloud-free eye or a rain-free eye, which is also an indication that the storm is struggling to strengthen. We are waiting for an all-important recon pass from AF306. In fact, we do have that pass, and they have turned right, straight right, to go into the eastern quadrant of the storm. They got extrapolated 979.9 on their instruments. So extrapolated 979.9, probably supports 981, 982 millibars, but southeastern quadrant, they only got maximum SFMRs of 55 knots, but they did get 75 knot flight level winds. So some strong winds aloft, and we await any info that they may have gotten from a quick drop sonde that they might have put in there. But they are going back into the eastern side. The northern side, though, is probably the strongest right now. But those red areas, again, I'll circle them. I'll do a little bit of annotating. We're seeing this area here, this line right now that's moving in, that's quite strong. This, of course, that's already moving onshore, that is quite strong as well. That's going that way. Those two areas are the strongest part of the hurricane right now, both getting very close to the coast. Any news on that potential water spout?
Yes, let me just find it again. So if you look,
Oh yes,
it's still there. And if you look at the storm relative velocity, you can see a little bit of a couplet there. It is approaching Jamaica Beach. So it's still there as of the latest scan. It's a little broader though. So I'm not sure if it is a water spout anymore, but it does seem like it has weakened a little bit, but it's still there. It still is a bit of rotation near Jamaica Beach. So we will watch, but it does seem like the threat has diminished slightly with that. Of course, these possible water spouts or tornadoes will be extremely brief because usually they are
yeah.
brief when inside tropical systems.
And that's piling into the coast right now. It's just west of Jamaica Beach. Very small communities here, well, relatively. Indian Beach is very close by as well, so it's going to be somewhere near there. And just off Galveston Island State Park, it's on the island there, further to the southwest. So we're looking again at this viewpoint from Galveston. It's the closest camera we have to the storm, which is a bit unfortunate. It's quite some way, but they will be getting tropical storm force winds here. There was a camera at San Luis Pass, but that went down before the storm even arrived. So we're looking at Galveston. We saw a couple of what looked like power flashes earlier on the other camera, which is now down apparently on the along the beach. I think it went down, and we've just got this viewpoint instead. So I do wonder whether there may be a localized power outage there, but looking into the city here, it is still very much functioning. Oh, there's another flash in the distance there as well. So, you know, the grid at Galveston is under pressure right now as we continue to watch this coverage. The storm getting very close to landfall. Could this system interact with mid-latitude system up north, producing severe weather in Michigan? That's one for you, Maury. I've not looked at that far ahead.
I don't know if the system will be strong enough. I don't think it will be strong enough. By then, it'll be a pretty weak system. Let me see what
I'm just looking at NAM 3K. There could be some interesting storms, but I doubt they're going to be too serious. But they will be pushing into southern Michigan on Wednesday morning.
Well, realize the NAM initialized the storm way too strong
Well,
too.
that is true. It had landfall as a must be a Cat 2 at least.
Yeah, so in Michigan, it is in the cone where it'll be maybe a tropical depression, maybe a post-tropical storm, with winds at around 25 miles per hour. They won't be in the northeastern side though, most likely. And if they are, it'll be far southern Michigan. It'll be like near Adrian, Bedford Township, where there might be a tiny tornado threat, but really it's very unlikely.
All right. Someone in the chat has a friend in Beaumont. What are the impacts there? They are just on the edge of getting some drizzle right now by the looks of things on radar. And I expect that they'll get away pretty lightly. They shouldn't get tropical storm force winds, although there is still a chance. I think they are at about 10%, something like that. Something like a 10% chance of tropical storm force winds. In fact, let me just read out a bunch of places, just so that if anyone has a similar question about other places here. So, Corpus Christi still has about a 14% chance. Victoria, somewhere near 50%. Of course, Port O'Connor, eastwards to Galveston, 90% plus. Houston, nearly 100%. Austin is at 5%. Waco at 4%. Lake Charles, Louisiana at 7%. Beaumont is still a little bit higher, actually. It's still at 43% roughly. So there is a fair chance of tropical storm force winds, but if it does, it won't last very long and will be quite weak. Northwards, Bryan at around 50%. Tyler at around 15%. Dallas-Fort Worth, 1% if anything. And Shreveport, Louisiana at about 10%. So it's an idea of a few of those locations and the chances of storm conditions. We can, I think we can pop over to that camera that we were looking at yesterday at Uptown Houston. We'll be able to in a moment. But not right now. I doubt there's anything much happening there. Let's go back to the camera at Galveston. It's what we're watching the most right now. We just got a position estimate update, and we estimate now that the storm, the center of the eye, is 19 kilometers offshore, which is 12 miles. It looks like it hasn't moved in a bit because the eye is oscillating, and in fact it's losing its shape, I think, in these last minute changes to this storm. It really looks like it's getting stretchier left to right as that rotation continues, and some interesting looking colors appearing near the center. I just wonder, Maury, is it a last-ditch attempt at an eyeball replacement cycle? I doubt it.
Well, it could be some cloud tops attempting to develop, but it is unlikely now because it it could try. It could try, but it'll obviously fail because of the land interaction that it's currently experiencing.
Just
Uh,
getting more recon data. They've just got an 85 knot flight level wind on the eastern side. It is pretty much going to be this red area that's looking really gnarly on these latest images right here, right at that point. Probably draw an X somewhere there. 85 knot flight level winds in that. That would correlate to at least a 85 mile per hour hurricane, though SFMRs are a little bit lower, around 70 knots. So 80 to 85 miles per hour based on that data, I think, is a fair bet. We are waiting to see if they dropped any more dropsons in that last pass. We've not got any data yet, but we are getting wind data there. from that latest recon pass. They're moving into the eastern side of the eye wall, and they briefly got a 85 knot flight level wind, and that is 100 miles per hour at height. But will it become a Category 2? I don't think so. It is pretty much out of time. Could it even intensify after landfall? Well, that is a completely different question. Some models have been suggesting that that's a possibility even, or at least deepening, if not strengthening in pressure. At least for a couple of hours until it starts moving inland properly. Obviously there's still a lot of water nearby. It's right next to Matagorda Bay, and potential brown ocean effect as well, rearing its ugly head again, possibly with this storm. But right now we're giving it an estimate of 85 miles per hour, pressure 982 millibars. We were thinking it would make landfall at half past at first, but this particular hour it has really slowed down for a sec. So it's leaving us on our toes again for perhaps another hour before it finally makes that landfall. But at the moment, indications showing that the center of the eye is about 18 kilometers offshore, about 12 miles, and that the edge of the eye is over the Matagorda Peninsula. And it really is looking quite wide now on radar, this eye. And again, there's a moat there in the southern side. Southern side really looking comparatively weak compared to the northern side, although they did get brief hurricane force winds in the upper levels on that more southeast. And that may have been part of that chunky band that was moving through. We do have a drop sonde from the eye, and they have gone with 8 knots at 982 millibars, so that coupled with that 979.9 extrapolated flight level would suggest probably 981. That is probably what ought to be run with there. So if it were me, I'd be pushing for 85 miles per hour, 981 at this point. But just a reminder, the last update from the top of the hour from the National Hurricane Center was 80 miles per hour and 982. Just had a new radar frame suggesting that the center of the eye is now 15 kilometers offshore. So it looks like it's starting to move again. I just hovered a little bit before moving. 15 kilometers, which is only about 9 or 10 miles. So really getting very close, and as you can clearly see, part of the peninsula is well within the eye at this point, and we'll be getting calmer conditions. Let's go back to Houston uptown right now. Here's a live view on the western side of town, and you can see what it's looking like. Looks like there's some windiness there, at least where that camera is. Let's see if we can just improve that picture quality. That's a bit better, isn't it? Showing what things are looking like. Still a fair bit of well, a few cars out there on the highway, but getting pretty windy there. It's quite hard to tell just how much when we're looking from sort of afar. I mean, you can't really see the trees very well from this position, but certainly conditions will be getting worse there throughout the morning. Let's see what other cameras we've got right now. This is Port Aransas. Obviously we can't see very much there, but we were looking at that area much earlier on. See what else we got. This is Rockport. Obviously this area has very much dodged the storm, so they'll be pleased with that. And Bayou Vista, which is again very close to Galveston, just to the northwest on your way back towards Houston. A Can't see very much there. You can just about make out the horizon, but a bit of a struggle on that imagery. Back to this live shot from Galveston. We saw quite a few power flashes, but they still have it. Or at least the area that we're looking at does. The other Galveston camera near the beach did go down, so I'm not sure if they have full power. Do we think Beryl's crazy record breaking is a sign of things to come for this Atlantic season? I have no idea at this point. We've no idea what's going to happen this hurricane season. It could be a one-hit wonder, but it sounds like the Atlantic season is going to have a few more things on tap for us this season. We are still so early on. Michael asking in the chat whether that 85 knot flight level wind means it's a category 2. No sir. Flight level winds obviously are usually much higher than they are on the ground. You think of buildings, how the winds are always much stronger at the top of very tall buildings. Well, it's even higher further up in the air with those recon planes. So we usually have a general conversion rate, and it factors down to about 80 to 85 miles per hour on the ground. So we're waiting for more info as we watch this storm getting closer and closer to its landfall. And we did have a drop zone through the maximum wind band on the eastern side when they got that 85 knot flight level. They have 69 knots at the surface, 991 millibars. But through the flight levels at times they did get, at the very high levels, at 804 millibars heights, they got 97 knots. And that would have been a gust as well. But in that particular area, safe to say that the storm is about 80 miles per hour. It's a very interesting storm in that the wind speeds will be probably wildly varying depending on where in the storm you are. South side, we're probably looking at winds of about 60 miles per hour. North side, about 80 miles per hour. And east northeast side about 85 is the best summary I can give you on that. Distance update, 14 kilometers offshore. That now is about 8 miles, 8 or 9 miles. So edging closer and closer to land, and at this rate we will be looking at landfall in about half an hour. Although if it decides it wants to be a bit awkward about it, as it has done this hour, it might take us a little bit longer. It does look like it's really slowed down in the last couple of hours here, just in time for our coverage. If you missed it earlier, they issued a flash flood warning for southern Brazoria and northeastern Matagorda County. They're expecting flash flooding ongoing or expected to begin shortly. And again, that covers Lake Jackson, southern Angleton, Bay City, Freeport, Clute, West Columbia, Sweeney, Surfside Beach, Richwood, Brazoria, Jones Creek, Oyster Creek, southern Bailey's Prairie, Wild Peach Village, Sargent, and Van Vleck. This is Force 13 Live. We're continuing to watch Hurricane Beryl on its second iteration, of course. It was a tropical storm for so long and tried to intensify. It turned out to be quite slow in the end. We're very thankful this isn't what it could have been. It could easily have been a major hurricane at this point. Of course, we were all talking about Harvey comparisons earlier on. Well, it's going to be no Harvey, which is good news. Maury, what you're looking at right now? Is that potentially another water spout?
No, not at the moment. I was watching this, but it doesn't look too concerning at the moment. So, we're watching. I just was watching some feeds, and it does seem like there is some strong winds, of course, with the eye wall. Uh, very strong winds, some waves crashing ashore. Uh, no lampposts or anything like that were taken down necessarily because these are only like 80, 85 mile per hour winds at most sustained, but this still were intense winds and definitely were would likely to be causing some damage.
And that'll be over Palacios right now as well. The strong wind band is going to be over Palacios at this time, and Bay City really going to get some high winds pretty soon. They're quite close to a little fracture actually in the main northern wind band, but I think they'll get a little bit more soon. So Bay City, watch out! Next half hour here, you're going to get some strong winds. Not too much else to talk about in terms of areas that are being affected. Obviously, we've got this view from Galveston getting some harsh winds at times, we think, and heavy rain. Of course, we had that other camera in Galveston that went down. I'll keep checking it in case it reappears again. Yeah, nope, that camera is down now for good, I think. So we're looking back at this viewpoint as we wait for more aircraft data, in which they are getting some very strong winds in the east northeast side. They've actually got a 90 knot flight level wind now, although only 60 knot SFMR, but that may well correlate to 85 to 90 miles per hour on the ground now. So
Maybe a slightly stronger storm. But I don't know if it's strengthening. It's just it might have been stronger to begin with.
no, I don't. I think that band is pretty intense that's about to move on to the coast. I think this will be short-lived, however, because that band will be moving inland shortly. So I don't
Yeah,
know. I
that's
don't know whether they'll keep running with a lower number, but I think it does support 90 miles per hour now.
yeah, and that band is going to San Luis Pass towards Freeport. That general region. So Freeport, Treasure Island, Lake Jackson, they'll receive some probably intense winds.
Beryl's annoying us a bit right now. It's only moved 2 miles in the last 20 minutes. 25 minutes, actually. It's not moving very quickly right now. It's decided to do a little bit of stalling before landfall.
Oh, I really hope that doesn't mean strengthening. I don't think so,
What
but
you can see, though, is more of the coast is entering the eye. Matagorda itself looks like it will be in the eye now. And off towards the west as well. They are fairly sparse areas, of course Matagorda itself being a town there, but around it, not very much. The whole county of Matagorda, in fact, has a population of 35,000 or so, which is still a fair bit, obviously, but pales in comparison to what it could have been if the storm hit, say, Galveston, Houston, Corpus Christi, much larger places by an order of magnitude. So this is certainly one of the better case scenarios from Hurricane Beryl when we were coming into this. But we are still looking at a powerful mid-range or maybe high-range Category 1 hurricane. And people are saying the southern side is connected again. Well, it may well be. Still very flaky on that southern side, though. And that's more towards how it looked earlier, in fact. But Recon definitely got some pretty powerful winds on the east-northeast side. Quite far away from the centre as well. They got that at about 95 degrees west exactly, which means that that is directly south of the western tip of Galveston Island. It is in that big band on that right hand side, which appears to be spewing further and further away from the centre of this storm. It feels like Beryl is really growing in size, in the sense of its eye appears to be getting much larger, and the loose eye wall around it is still very loose and loosening further. But nonetheless, some very strong winds in there. Well, at this rate, Recon may have an opportunity to do one more pass then. We're going to see if they turn left shortly and go for another northeast to southwest pass. And I think they may have that opportunity here because the storm slowed down. Yair says it reminds them of Ike. I can see the comparison at this point.
It is similar. I mean, in strength, anyways. Where did Ike make landfall?
Sorry?
Where did Ike make landfall?
I'm pretty sure it was further east. I can't actually remember now, but...
Of course, it was heading in a completely different direction, but... I can see the resemblance.
Wasn't Ike on the border? Or was that... I'm completely forgotten now.
Yeah, let me check.
No, it was further towards here, wasn't it? Ike made landfall pretty much over Galveston.
Yeah.
Latest estimate for the storm's position, still 14 kilometers offshore. Meaning that it has moved about 2 miles in the last 30 minutes. So it is definitely a... I don't want to say stalling because that's more long term, but in the last hour it has barely moved and possibly a trichoidal wobble, but at this time it looks like it is still moving very slowly, but it is swirling surely towards a landfall shortly in Matagorda County, very close to Matagorda itself. We expect that it will happen still within an hour. Sir Revenant says that they know Apple's weather app sucks, but it says 5.5 inches in the next 24 hours for northern Houston. And do we think that's fair? I think it is possible. Let me double check what we're expecting. North side of Houston, you will probably get... it's close. Small distances will probably make a big difference there. Say northeast Houston, you'll probably get 2 to 3 inches, but northwest Houston 5 plus, I would say. So certainly that possibility. AF306 is indeed going in for another northeast to southwest pass. They're literally riding along the coast. They just got another flight level wind of just above 80 knots, SFMR of 60 knots, just along the coast right now, and they're heading in again towards the eye. There's also 2 ground stations that are recording, I think, 60 knot or 55 knot winds right now. 2 ground stations, one at that airfield that I was talking about much earlier, Pierce Field, and the other one near Matagorda, both indicating 65 mile per hour winds right now on the ground stations. National Hurricane Center are updating every hour. They'll be updating again in just a few minutes. But I think they may be holding on just to see what that recon plane does. But the indications, if you've just joined us from this storm, is that it looks like it is carrying 85 to 90 mile per hour winds now, and a pressure estimate of around 981. Looks like we'll need to refresh that camera there. Let's see if we can check in on Galveston again. And it looks like there's more rain again than before. At times we have seen what have looked like power flashes in the distance. But at the moment the grid remains online. Just going to double check the power outage map though. We do have a few places out at the moment, but not in Galveston. There are 397 out in Galveston, but it's Matagorda right now that is that has nearly 4,000 out. That's about nearly a quarter, about 20% of power is out in Matagorda County. In Brazoria County, we've got about 5% out at this time. Also in Kennedy County, way further south, there is about 15% out of power down there. In Calhoun County, we got about a just above a 1% outage, and in Jackson County we have 1% out at the moment. This is Force 13 live as we continue to watch Hurricane Beryl on its final little punt here towards its landfall. We're so close at this point before we can finally call quits on forecasting this damn storm strengthening. But still very powerful winds on that eastern flank we clearly have been seeing from recon moving into that flash flooding area right now. Well, at this point, our best estimate is that the center of the storm is 14 kilometers offshore. Yep, it's the same as I said 10 minutes ago. So it is at the moment, right in this hour, barely moving. In the last hour, it has moved probably about 5 miles. And with 8 or 9 miles still to go, this could be another long hour. But we also have recon that are still flying in. They have enough time to make one more center pass. Northeast. They're going through the eye wall shortly. And we'll see if they can still see some very strong winds. But once again, those very strong winds they got of 85 knot flight level was very far away from the center considering. In that big bulky red band that's sweeping up the coast right now. That's going to hit with some force, it's very clear to see. South side still looking rather devoid of activity. Let's see if we can just do an estimate here of how wide that eye is. Look at that. 38 miles.
Yeah.
The 3 a.m. advisory should be out very soon. So we're going to be a little bit patient here. But this is Hurricane Beryl. And it's right now, very shortly, we're going to see this landfall. Of course, landfall is often more symbolic than anything. The strongest winds are already moving ashore. And they're doing it right now. Mainly in Brazoria County, as well as the very eastern part of Matagorda County. Those two places are going to get the strong winds, the strongest winds from this storm. If not already, then it will be in the next hour, with winds of up to 90 miles per hour and higher gusts possible. Just need to remind everyone, the official line from the National Hurricane Center is still 80 miles per hour, 982, before this update appears. I'd be surprised if they keep it there, because obviously they've gotten stronger winds. I expect at least a bump up to 85 miles per hour, and 981 millibars appears to be safe from the recon data. They may even go 980 at this advisory. We're going to find out together in just a moment when they produce that update, as we also look out for any further recon data. But we're just at a little bit of a waiting period there for both of those, as we tick down the final few miles before landfall. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. You can chat to us live. Do we think there's any chance Beryl might get pushed east along the coastline to prevent landfall? Oh, please. If she keeps slowing like this, she's going to get picked up by the stream. I get your point. At the moment, though, it's not doing that at all. It's not being moved. In fact, if anything, it's further west than expected at this moment. Darren says, thanks for our coverage. And they watched our coverage of Typhoon Odette in 2021. So we lost power on December 16th. Typhoon Rai, a very powerful Category 5 storm, of course, which we remember well. That was the one that slammed through the Visayas region. We should have this update anymore. Here it is. In fact, they have kept it at 80 miles per hour, 982 millibars. I am surprised. Beryl expected to make landfall along Middle Texas coast within the next hour or two. Life-threatening storm surge and heavy rainfall is ongoing across portions of Texas. Sustained tropical storm force winds and hurricane force wind gusts have already been reported. Pretty much the same thing they said last time. A NOS station, 8773146, located at Matagorda City, recently reported a sustained wind of 68 miles per hour and a gust of 86. So certainly some strong winds in Matagorda, which is now inside the eye. So a bit of a surprise at that 3 a.m. position update, because it really appears as though the storm is stronger than 80 miles per hour, but that's what they've gone with. New recon just entering again now, 979.9 extrapolated, and they're still not at the center yet, so that's going to go down. And flight level winds around 80 knots northeast. So those strongest winds that were 85 knot flight level, I think they're moving inland and probably not quite as strong again. So I reckon briefly we could have had a 90 mile per hour peak there, but right now I would definitely estimate 85, and according to that, from what we're hearing, it looks like we're going to be looking at about 980 millibars, but we don't have the full recon data yet. But definitely a surprise of sorts that the National Hurricane Center did not up the intensity. We're just trying to ascertain a new position estimate. I think it is starting to move again. We're now estimating that the storm is 10 kilometers off the coast of the Matagorda Peninsula. 10 kilometers, just 6 miles. 6 very short miles to its first landfall, and if it actually hits exactly where Matagorda is, it would only be 1 landfall. There is a very small gap between the land masses there, the peninsula and the mainland, Barrier Island of course. So we could technically see 2 landfalls. They'd be very closely spaced. But in any case, it will be moving through Matagorda County when it moves inland, and possibly, well, I fully expect Bay City will enter the eye later, and then it will move up towards somewhere like Wharton and possibly towards the very western suburbs of Houston, Brookshire, Cady, maybe Rosenberg, Sealy, Hempstead, Waller, and eventually continue up north-northeast eventually. Still at this time though, the movement is north-northwest. So in addition to the strength, that we still haven't seen the western extremity of this storm's track yet. It hasn't started that bend. Well, it does look like the southeastern side is trying to pick up again on the inner part of the eye wall there. Although conversely, the southwestern side looks like it's weakening. Maury, any sign of any other water spouts in the area?
There is this one tiny feature. However, it is far off the coast at the moment, so it's not a big deal. However, I am watching it maybe in the next hour or so, possibly for continuous. You can see a little bit of these rotations.
Now you're looking at velocity there. What are the wind speeds in the storm that it's indicating? You'll probably get a better view there of what they're getting at altitude. You know, the strongest winds in the hurricane.
Well, you can see. I mean, these are some pretty strong winds that are getting up to 46 meters per second. Let me just convert that into miles per hour.
That's quite high.
Yeah, 46 meters
That
per
must
second.
be at least 100 miles per hour, but it is at very upper levels.
But those are gusts. Those are gusts, of course. 103 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So maybe gusts up to 105 miles per hour, which is what we expected with the storm.
At flight level, though, as well.
At flight level, so it could be lower. Maybe more like 100 miles per hour.
If you animate that radar, though, I assume those winds stick around quite a bit and they're not just flashing up. So,
yeah,
really, you could say that's sustained.
I guess.
I mean, it's in line with what Recon is saying, isn't it?
I know, but in that case, it would be like a Category 2.
No, because it's a flight level.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was unsure.
Let's take a look at some more imagery here. Here is some infrared of how the storm's been blowing. I mean, you can't really see that eye at all on satellite imagery. And you have to poke through the cloud to take a look at the radar, which shows almost a completely different storm, really. With a very wide eye right now, estimated to be about 38 miles. Certainly on radar. We're very close to landfall here. It does look like it started to move again. and that we will see the landfall pretty soon. But yeah, people in the chat very surprised that the National Hurricane Center kept it at 80 miles per hour. Me too. I really thought they would go higher. It's definitely 85, maybe even 90. And pressure estimate should be about, they should have gone 981 at that update. And we're about to get new recon data that will probably put that down further. But again, on this latest imagery, it's sort of from the northwest, arcing round to the northeast. Really strong winds in there, entering that flash flood warning zone, that little circle that's been placed on the map. Lake Jackson well within that. Dr. Creepier says, why has Beryl moved so much further north and east than expected? It was originally supposed to make landfall in Mexico. It was ridge weakening and troughing that pulled and lifted the storm northwards over the last few days. It could have gone further east, though, you know. It could have been a Galveston landfall. But it is, somewhat thankfully, a much less populated area that is getting this landfall. Still 36,000 people in Matagorda County that will be experiencing these very strong winds. But it could have been worse. Another comment thanking us for the updates and that they're amazing and accurate. Well, we do our best. I don't think we're always accurate, you know. Everyone makes mistakes, especially during Beryl. But we do our best with the info we have. And Aruda Noah says, why is the National Hurricane Center so conservative on providing data? They have been this year, haven't they? Even for me, I mean, I generally estimate on the conservative side slightly, not that much, I don't think. But NHC even more than that in recent times, which is a bit of a surprise. They did get 70 knot SFMRs in the latest pass as well, northeast. They will be getting a center fix anytime now, and we'll be bringing that to you. But yes, it did look like landfall would have been about 2:30 when we were making our assessment just before we went on the air, and we pushed the live stream. We brought it forward an hour. We were originally hoping to start at 3 a.m. but we actually started at 2 a.m. because it really looked like it would make landfall about 2:30. But here we are at 3:07. Still hasn't happened yet because it did a last-minute stalling motion there for an hour, and that is still occurring, although it does look like it's starting to move again. It is a wobble. We do fully expect it to move again at pace, and it should start speeding up shortly. But still waiting for landfall, but it is extremely close, and possibly that the storm is now moving north, but can't confirm that yet. But the center of the storm is very close to landfall now. Got a 3 a.m. position update suggesting it's hard to see where the center actually is now. I'm not sure whether you're seeing a little bit of rotation. Let me just get this up here. You're seeing this little green area there rotating. I'm not sure whether that's the center or whether, given that it's rotating, that the center might actually still be here, which is where I was thinking it would be. And if it is where the X is, then that is, like I said, about 9 kilometers from land, or 10. But if it is still down in that little rotating thingy, but it looks like a mesovortice, vortex. If it is down there, it's still more towards 14 kilometers. But the more I look at that, the more I think it is a little bit further north, but we still can't really tell. We get this question all the time about whether Beryl will be retired. I don't think it's in good taste to speculate. Skeletor says, how much time till landfall? Your guess is as good as mine. If it starts moving, we should be seeing landfall within 20 minutes. If it decides it wants to take another break, then we might be looking at the end of the hour. But it really is getting into very small margins. More of the eye is appearing over land. The south edge of the eye is still moving northwards. You can see it clearly there. And so it would appear that the center is getting very close. If you've just joined us, this is our coverage on Hurricane Beryl. We're giving it 85 mile per hour winds and an estimated pressure of probably 981 now, based on the last recon data. National Hurricane Center, somewhat surprisingly, keeping it at 80 miles per hour at their 3 a.m. update. And at the 4 a.m. update, which is coming up next hour, that's a big one. It's where they update everything, including the forecast cone, and knowing them, I think they'll be wanting to call landfall at that point. But only if Beryl agrees, right? Because Beryl's been very disagreeable at times during its track here. Historic track through the Caribbean and into the Gulf. I think we have new recon data. Yep, they went through the center again. They got an extrapolated 979.4, so down 0.5 since their last pass. That would support 980 or 981 millibars at the center. They got 80 knot winds on the northeast side, and they're getting 75 knot winds. They've gone back out east again. So they're doing very small triangles on that east-northeast side. And again, they're going to be looking out for those really strong winds that we saw an hour ago. Whether they're still getting 85 knot flight level winds or not. So we'll see. And of course, we'll be waiting up for an eye drop sonar. In fact, already in 979 millibars at 6 knots, which is a bit surprising actually, because that's below the extrapolated number. So I'm not sure what that actually means, but it would appear that this is probably 979 millibars. In the northeast eye wall, they dropped another son down there as well. At 994 millibars, they got winds of 73 knots. And they got 88 knots at the 951 millibar level, although that is a gust. Again, pretty much in line with what radar has been showing and previous info, suggesting an 85 or 90 mile per hour storm on that latest recon data, but an eye pass drops on 979. It's going to be a pretty tough hour here as we continue to watch this storm push on closer towards its landfall. Let's see if we can hop back to that Galveston camera. We'll have to reload it. And there it is again. Still looks like they're getting a lot of rain there now. Definitely an uptick on that rain. They're just on the edge of a pretty strong band. Not the strongest band that we've been talking about, but another one that's further out. So definitely an increase in the rain rate there. This is the south side of Galveston. Another power flash there by the looks of it. So more stormy conditions there in Galveston, near the centre, well, a fair way away from the centre of the storm. It's about 85 miles away from the storm, from the centre of the eye. And we await more data. We'll hopefully get a new drop zone from the eastern side shortly, which is, again, maybe 80 mph winds. Have we lost that camera now? I think we've lost Galveston. So it looks like we've lost that. So the closest camera we now have is Bayou Vista, which is to the northeast of Galveston, just inland a bit, but you can't see very much on that at all, can you? What's the point? So we're really throwing it back to the graphical stuff that we have rather than our live cams, because it doesn't look like there's very much that we can see on the ones that are still working. But Galveston cameras look like they are now down and out. Oh, is it back? Hold on a sec. I think we got it back. But clearly struggling. And I'm just wondering if there might be some more power outages here, because there's quite a few gaps there in the lights. I don't know if that's... Maybe they still have the power there. I can't quite tell if there are little gaps where the power might be out. But we have seen power flashes, so there's just another one off shot there. I think. It's either that or lightning, but I think we've seen quite a lot of blue power flash looking stuff. So Galveston getting hit hard and could be struggling. We are getting more news of power outages in Matagorda County as well. There are now nearly 7,000 out in Matagorda. That is about 40% of the whole county, at least of the info that we have available to us. That camera's gone again for the time being. In Galveston itself, though, we're only seeing a very small amount without power at this time. It's only about 0.5%. In Wharton County, we're nearly at 10% out now as well. And in Jackson County, it's about 2%. And in Calhoun County, it's nearly 2% as well. But we're continuing to watch Hurricane Beryl, deciding it wants to do a little bit of stalling motion just before it makes landfall, which is really causing issues. But a lot of the eye now overland in Matagorda, and it is still edging northwards. It does very much look like the western motion has stopped in its tracks. And that commenter before, I swear to God, if this turns northeast right now,
It better not.
as it stands, it looks like it is moving due north. Their last update statement still said it was moving north-northwest, but I think it's moving at least due north right now. Could still be a jog. But landfall expected very soon. You know, you're talking a good 30 to 40% of the eye is over the coast. So it can't be long, surely, before we get this landfall. Although, again, the southern eye wall starting to look chunkier again there on those latest frames, looking more shored up. We're definitely seeing some tightening, I think. And if it was allowed to go for another 12 hours, it really would have rapidly strengthened, I think. It's hard to get a fix anymore because we're not seeing any more of these low-level mesovortices on radar. Our best estimate now is that the center of the eye is 7 solitary kilometers from the coast, from the Matagorda Peninsula. 7 kilometers, about 4.5 miles, as it, I don't want to say limps home because that makes it sound like it's weak. It is quite a strong storm, and if anything, it is strengthening. Recon getting some more strong winds, getting a lot of 80 knot winds, possibly pushing 85 knots. Let me just see if they got, no new drop-ons. But they're getting a large area of strong winds, and they're going out quite a far away as well. Right now, they've just passed 94.8 west, which is the same longitude as Galveston, and they're still getting hurricane force winds at flight level. 75 knots as well. So, very wide wind field at this rate. I'm starting to wonder whether it's possible that Galveston could get hurricane force winds.
I mean, it's possible if this band continues to move towards the east.
Huge band.
I mean, there currently is a band that is over Galveston. I don't know if that has hurricane force winds, though.
Definitely
it would
not.
have to. This storm, probably the back end of that inner band, would have to touch the Galveston area.
And it still might.
It might.
A huge chunky band that's moving along here, and that's really the tail of this hurricane right now. Let's see if we can get some more questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Quite a few of the same stuff, really. Shouldn't there be a landfall advisory? Well, I think it might get timed exactly with the full advisory, which is at the top of the hour. It's going to be close, but if they find something that deviates from that, then they'll probably do a landfall advisory. I mean, looking at Maury's imagery here, that is actually showing that the center is getting very close. It's close to where your pointer is, just maybe a little bit south.
Maybe right here.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the DBZ pointer. Just between your mouse and that probe that you've got. Yeah, around about there, I think, is where the center would be right now.
And that's...
Oh, just a couple of miles, I think.
4.5 miles.
4.5 miles. John is in Victoria, and it's so dead there, apparently. No wind and not even a sprinkle. I'm just looking at radar. Victoria is indeed outside of it all. It's a very close pass. But yes, Victoria, you are probably not going to see anything from this storm, really. It is very close to making its closest pass to you right now. And the south side is thinner than the northern side, so it does look as though you will miss pretty much everything in Victoria. Maybe just get a little bit of rain coming in there. It's going to be close, that little line. But only getting into the greens. We are sitting here waiting for the landfall of Hurricane Beryl, which we expected would have been a little bit earlier the way it was progressing, but a hitch before the landfall here. A bit of a stalling motion. It has moved very slowly in the last hour. Only about, I think it must have been now about 7 or 8 miles. So we're not liking that very much, especially when before that it kept a 6-hour trend of 15 miles per hour. So it's effectively halved its speed. And it is extremely late at night, so I imagine our energy levels are going to be a little bit low on this stream today in these early morning hours. But bear with us, this is Beryl, and landfall expected very soon. There's not much else for me to say. There really isn't at this point. Let's see if we can cut back to that Galveston camera if it's still working. And it is. There again, live view from Galveston, which has been hit by the edge of an outer band, which has had some pretty serious stuff in it. The inner band, huge inner band. To be honest now, it's a moderate band, I should say. In fact, Maury, if you look at radar, there's a new inner band appearing on the right hand side, so we should see weakening of that outer band very shortly, if not already, as the energy transfers to that inner band.
Oh yeah, I see that. This thing right here, right?
Just on that right hand side.
Yeah, yeah. I see that. So it probably will transfer the energy.
It is building in, and you can already see on that the big band. Not very scientific here, are we? In the middle now, it is losing some energy. Seeing less oranges there in those latest frames.
Yeah, yeah. So that probably will indicate that energy transfer between bands.
So Galveston may avoid hurricane force winds after all, but Freeport, possibly hurricane conditions on the way for you there. And we're looking at radar velocity right now. In quite a few areas near the centre of the storm. Maury, what are they getting on radar velocity?
Let me check.
Still around the same values there in both of those
Yeah,
bands.
around 103 miles per hour.
We'll see how much longer that sustains for. Latest indication is that the storm is still 7 kilometers from landfall. Just a tiny distance for Beryl to be covering now. About 4 or 5 miles before we can almost say goodbye to Beryl's strengthening phase. Although there is still a possibility that it could strengthen just a tiny bit more as it makes landfall, and just for a couple of hours after it moves inland, because I am sensing a brown ocean effect. But certainly recon data is not suggesting that this storm is strengthening actively. Well, deepening, yes, with the pressure a little bit further, around 979. But as for winds, they haven't beaten what they got just over an hour ago. In fact, it was exactly an hour ago when they got a 90 knot flight level wind. Back in the same areas, they've only got 85 this time around. Recon starting to turn further towards the northeast, but wow, they are still getting strong winds. They're still getting hurricane force winds at flight level, and they're now as far east as they're at the same latitude, same longitude as, what's the next county over? I'm trying to get this up on my display. Nope, not showing up. What's that county east of Chambers?
The one that encompasses Port Arthur.
Jefferson. Jefferson County. It's just the plane is off the shore there by quite some distance still, but they're still getting hurricane force flight level winds off Jefferson County, which isn't even under a storm surge warning. And I think they're only under a tropical storm warning, but the way that's going, I mean, that's nearly hurricane force winds on the ground. Well, we're getting so close to landfall here. More and more of the eye is moving inland, but only very slowly at this point. Some more comments here. Beryl is definitely growing in size because it's starting to get worse in North Houston, and Beryl hasn't even moved. Also, it looks to be moving east now. It's not moving east. Let's not get ahead of ourselves there. I think it's moving north right now. Luke says, any ideas about the storm surge in Freeport? Well, it's going to be near the maximum, around 7 feet. John says, Surfside Beach is flooded. And in between Cedar Lake and Freeport, reports of major flooding. So we're getting more comments there regarding that. But as of right now, all we can really do is watch this radar imagery. Just one little push and Beryl will end up overland. Let's see if we can check the camera now in Houston, since someone mentioned it before getting worse. Well, this is uptown on the west side. A very wet picture. Not too much else that we can see on that image though at this time. And so we'll switch it back again to that viewpoint in Galveston if it's still up and running, which it is. And as you can see, tons of rainfall there. Waiting to see what Recon will do. Will they go in for yet another pass? They did get a eye wall drop sond as well, again on the east side, 997 millibars, 57 knots. And they only got 74 knots through the flight levels, which is interesting. That was actually in near the area where they were getting the stronger winds. But it certainly appears as though this storm is meritorious of 85 or maybe 90 miles per hour. Pressure estimate somewhere near 979 millibars according to the latest Recon data. But surprising to us that the National Hurricane Center at the 3 a.m. advisory did not upgrade the storm. More flashes there here on this camera. Power flashes by the looks of things. So again, they've still got it, but it's certainly not encouraging to see. It's getting so close, guys. We're very near the landfall at this point. I'm still watching some little bits on the radar here. You can see it here. It is, I think, starting to make that final push. And this is right up to the minute. The radar that I'm using to do my position plotting is about 10 minutes behind. And by that, the estimate on there was still about 6 kilometers offshore. 4 miles. Just a little bit more and Beryl will move inland. And I don't know whether this here is the center of the eye with this little bit of rain, or whether it's gravitating around. Looks like it might be swirling around a center, which might be here perhaps. Either way, all very close to Matagorda, which has been in the eye for a clear half hour now. But at this rate, I fully expect that we will have landfall at the National Hurricane Center's 4 a.m. major update. And we'll see what they say when that happens. I think I'd be very surprised if they didn't run with at least 85 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And still the threat for tornadoes as well, although, to be fair, Maury, we haven't actually seen many, have we? To this point.
We did see one earlier today in Beaumont, Texas. You can see the report here at around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Still unsure. There was some strong rotation. It was sort of strong near Galveston. Remember that small couplet that we had near Jamaica Beach? That did get stronger for a brief period and then weakened. There was no debris signature on it though, so I'm unsure if that was actually on the ground.
It's unlikely.
It is. And even if it was in very unpopulated areas, so we'll probably never know.
It won't take much until we get the landfall of Hurricane Beryl. As soon as it happens, we will, of course, make the announcement. We're going to want to be sure about it, though, because it's doing a little bit of funny business, and I'll be particularly peeved if it decided it tracked inland for a sec and then moves back out over water for another sec. So we want to be very sure when we make that landfall declaration, but it really looks like it's going to be very soon. Something's happening on that southwest side. It's closing in a little bit. Our latest estimate now is that the center of the eye is only 4 kilometers off the coast, 3 miles. AF306 still flying around the storm, moving off northeast. I do wonder whether they might be finishing their mission now. They did do no less than 7 eye passes, so it wouldn't surprise me if they're finishing. They are moving further out than they did previously, so I think they may be calling it a night, and after that there'll be no more recon. It is literally making landfall, so I think that's probably going to be it here. Is that a tornado warning?
Yes, there is a tornado warning active for Thompson's, Fairchilds, Needville, Julif, Arcola, and Pleak in Texas. I can't really spot. I think this is the rotation that they're looking at. It's hard to tell, but it does seem like that this was created from the bands of this hurricane, and it is in the Houston area.
Yeah, so there could be a significant population in that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We'll find out with the update shortly on that warning. I don't have it yet. But certainly it looks like, yep, it's just come out. Tornado warning in effect for Sienna Plantation, Needville, and Arcola until 4 a.m. Radar indicated 53,000 in this tornado warning right now. So look out for this if you're in these areas. Other places is that Jolliffe, Pleak, Fairchilds, Needville. So a tornado warning active. I think that may actually be the center there. It's very hard to tell. I think that might be the center, and it is literally about to make landfall. It is moving again. If that is indeed the center, we will be calling landfall in just a few minutes.
Yep.
Let's check it on your imagery. You can see the swirling a little bit better there.
I think that little piece of convection there might be the center.
Wow. No, I'm not sure. No, it's not. It's to the right of it. It's the little gap in between those two bits of convection that's the center.
Right here?
Yep. That's the
Okay.
center. And that's about to make landfall. It really is going for it now. I don't see any way to avoid it in the next couple of minutes here. Looks like we will finally get Beryl's landfall. And that, of course, is...
That's going to be... It's going to be close to Gulf, Texas. At least its second landfall.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the area it's called right there. There's a few houses on the beachfront. It's part of Matagorda. Just that little area on the beach. That's about to get hit. Well, just east of there, about to get the center of the eye, along a mostly unpopulated barrier island. Not even an island, I don't think. It's just part of the peninsula. So that is what we're looking at. We are expecting landfall imminently, and with every frame coming in, you can see it is literally happening right now. So landfall is occurring right here. Just want to circle where Matagorda is on this map. The town is there, and the beachfront is here, and the center of the eye is quite clear to see, moving through, drawing a line. There's going to be your landfall in just probably 1 minute. So there could still be just a tad bit of strengthening as it's doing so, although we didn't really see evidence of that from the recon planes. It looks like we're going to be seeing either an 85 or 90 mile per hour landfall and a pressure estimate of 979 millibars. And that will be this chapter of Beryl.
That neighborhood you're talking about, it's right by Matagorda Bay Nature Park.
Yeah.
I think it's just part of Matagorda. I don't think it has a name.
If anyone does know otherwise, please let me know. Let's see if we've got any more questions right now. None at the moment, but recon did finish. They are done, and won't be any more flights. So recon have done a stellar job during this storm. They must have gotten hundreds of eye passes during the life of Beryl. Incredible performance from those teams of the Air Force and NOAA, two different wings that do the same job. But in just a second, we will be able to confirm the landfall of Hurricane Beryl in Matagorda. We're just taking a look at Galveston again if we can, whilst we can. Oh dear. Conditions really gotten worse there. And they're getting pounded by the outer band. And in fact, there's a severe, not a severe thunderstorm warning, but two marine warnings, I think. Are there
And
water
yes,
spouts out there?
those are for water spouts, and there is this area of rotation that's right near Galveston at the moment.
Oh man.
Right. I really hope that doesn't strengthen.
So that'll be literally what you're seeing on that camera just then. Potential rotation. And are we going to be woken up with a shock tornado warning for Galveston possibly? Not yet, but stay tuned, it's possible.
It really just depends if it strengthens. We actually are seeing the strengthening of the rotation in the tornado warning.
What can you tell us about that? There it is.
Yes, so it is moving a little bit north of where anticipated, and it'll head right near Interstate 69 south of Rosenberg. So on the northern side of that warning.
So that's the one active tornado warning that is in effect here as we continue to wait for Beryl's landfall. Still haven't called it yet. National Hurricane Center will be updating with their full advisory in just a few minutes. But nothing at this time. We think they will probably call landfall as they do it. I don't know if they'll do a special update. If they do, it will be very closely spaced to the full advisory within minutes. We're just waiting for that next radar frame, which will probably confirm this landfall. In the meantime, I'm not sure what else to say right now. Oh, there's some new frames there. Still extremely close. I mean, this is just a formality at this point. You know, you're probably looking at it right here. Really teasing us right now. Within that big eye that it's got. But certainly for those on land, it doesn't make much of a difference whether landfall has occurred or not. But still, we've got to point out just how big that eye is. Let's just draw another. So in some parts of it, maybe 34 miles wide.
Yeah, about 33 miles.
Let's see if we've got any comments or questions right now. What caused the stalling? It's really just one of those little wobbles that these storms do. I wouldn't read anything into it. So close. It may have already done it. It's hard to tell. We just want to be totally sure before we can confirm that landfall. This is Hurricane Beryl right now, in the process of making landfall in Matagorda County, Texas. We will have news from the National Hurricane Center within minutes as well, when they produce their full advisory, expected any time. Recon left the storm now. We expect they will be running with, well, we don't know what the National Hurricane Center will be running with, but our estimate is still going to hold at 85 miles per hour and 979 millibars for the landfall. That's going to be our estimate. I don't know if any of our team are available to put it to social media, but that's what we're going to be running with. With that tornado warning still active as well. Just going to cut to this image for a little bit whilst I prepare some imagery. But this is Force 13 Live. We are expecting Beryl's landfall to be confirmed any minute, but it is happening right now. Awaiting confirmation. And oh man, I just could not tell at this point. But either way, it's awfully close. Base City about to enter the eye as well now. Goes to show how large it is.
I think this piece of convection here might be the center. Okay.
It's very hard to tell.
It is. But that would be making... It could also just make one landfall at that point. Because, of course, of that peninsula.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that would be right near Matagorda.
So, Beryl keeping us waiting till the very last minute. And I think we can confirm landfall at this point. Hurricane Beryl has made landfall in Matagorda County with winds of 85 miles per hour and a pressure estimate of 979 millibars. Landfall time 3:50. I'm just going to be updating social media with that whilst I'm on the air, so do bear with me. So landfall is what we've declared right now, and I fully expect that the National Hurricane Center will follow in just a couple minutes. As I continue to type a few things here, won't be a sec. But the breaking news is that Beryl has made landfall in Matagorda County, near Matagorda itself, along the coast of central Texas. Maury, your thoughts on this incredible storm then?
Well, it really is a sign of what's to come. I do think that this storm was notable for many reasons. It really did continue the process of science and technology. It did cause lots of damage, but it also led to lots of new information to be received from the cyclone. And I do think that this hurricane will be remembered for a long, long time as probably one of the strangest hurricanes yet.
Oh, well, that's one way of saying it. I think the update is not quite out, but is being prepared because they've removed that update statement. So you know when they do that they're getting ready with their full advisory. We're expecting it any minute here from the National Hurricane Center. We await that 4 a.m. update, but the news from us is that the storm has made landfall at 3:50 a.m., which was somewhat close to what we were initially expecting. Last night it was looking like it would have been about 5 a.m., and then late in the night the storm was going much quicker than expected, and it was looking like it would make landfall at 2:30. But then it stalled, and we finally have landfall at 10:04. The update is out. They have kept 80 miles per hour. I'm baffled by that. They have kept it at 80 miles per hour at 979 millibars at the landfall. And they have declared landfall themselves as well, the National Hurricane Center. The tropical storm warning has been discontinued south of Mesquite Bay, Texas. So a storm surge warning remains in effect for Mesquite Bay to Sabine Pass. Hurricane warning for the Texas coast from Mesquite Bay northward to Port Bolivar. Tropical storm warning for the Texas coast north of Port Bolivar to Sabine Pass. We are still expecting up to 7 feet of storm surge. Reports from an Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft and National Weather Service Doppler radar indicate that maximum sustained winds are near 80 miles per hour with higher gusts. Steady to rapid weakening is expected as the center moves inland, and Beryl is expected to weaken to a tropical storm later today and to a tropical depression on Tuesday. Hurricane force winds extend outwards up to 45 miles, and tropical storm force winds up to 115 miles. National Ocean Service Station near Freeport, Texas, recently reported a sustained wind of 71 miles per hour and a wind gust of 87, and the Weather Flow Station at Surfside Beach recently reported a wind gust of 85. Latest minimum central pressure from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft was 979. Weather Flow and National Ocean Service stations near Matagorda recently reported a pressure of 981 inside the eye of Beryl. So, incredible here. Beryl makes landfall in Matagorda County and is now starting its push inland, albeit still very slowly. We still don't have either the forecast advisory or their forecast discussion yet, so we don't know what they're actually forecasting for what it's worth. But what we read there is that they're expecting it to weaken to a tropical storm quite quickly and then to a depression by Tuesday. This is Force 13 Live coming up to 4 a.m. Hurricane Beryl makes landfall, the top story right now. There is still a tornado warning active as well, Maury.
Yes, there's actually 2.
Oh, another tornado warning.
Yes, but it's for the same cell. They just extended it. It's kind of confusing, though.
I'm not sure they did. They've put it behind it, haven't they? So that's a new one.
Oh, it must be a new one, then.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they extended it or if that's a completely new one. I guess that's a new one, then.
It is. Sienna Plantation, Arcola, and Juliff, Texas until 4:15. 39, nearly 40,000 people in that new tornado warning. Take cover now.
We do see a tiny area of rotation there. I think that's what they're looking at.
Wait, let's have a look. There we are.
Right here. I mean, that's really small, so I have no idea.
I can't even see it.
Yeah.
Being honest.
I don't know. Maybe it's this. You see this?
Oh.
It might be that. That would make more sense. But it's barely in any convection.
Yeah, it's difficult to see hardly anything there. But anyways, take cover now in that area, that tornado warning, which is active. 2 tornado warnings.
Oh, and one of them was just canceled,
Alright,
so now just one
just the
tornado
one.
warning.
And that flash flood warning, which is still in effect as well, for southern Brazoria and northeastern Matagorda County until 4:45. 2 to 4 inches of rain have already fallen. Additional rainfall amounts of 2 to 4 inches expected. So, Hurricane Beryl made landfall. We estimate it was around 10 to 4. We still don't have the forecast advisory or the discussion out yet. The public advisory came out, but we should be expecting those right now. It is on the hour. They're usually quite good with these. Maybe be able to offer you a little bit more info, but a rare occasion where the National Hurricane Center are actually slightly late at this point, but they did release their public advisory, which I suppose is the most important. The eye now moving inland slowly but surely. The very center, if you want to count it as a second landfall, is just about to do so. Very close to the small settlement of Gulf. And it is near Big Boggy National Wildlife Refuge. Certainly no town that it's made a landfall, no area of a large size. Of course, Matagorda is in the eye right now. And as you can see on our map, Bay City just about to enter the eye as well. But I think it's a relief for many that Beryl failed to breach Category 2 or 3 status, which it easily could have done. And it is still a Category 1 at landfall, and we should start to see weakening very soon. It is still right on the coast though, and at the moment it is moving slowly. I am still not getting that forecast advisory. I'm a bit surprised. Let's see if we can go back to Galveston again. It's the closest camera that we've got. Just seeing if it's still working. It is. They're getting huge amounts of rain by the looks of things. Saw a little flash there. That may have actually been a lightning flash that time. But we have seen a lot of power flashes in Galveston. And as you can see, very heavy rainfall as well. It is hard to get a grasp of it from such a height. But certainly the decrease in visibility tells its own story. But I was definitely surprised that the National Hurricane Center only went with 80 miles per hour on their update. The data really suggests that it was stronger than that. That at one point at about 3 a.m. it was probably 90 miles per hour. And at this point it's probably still 85. But the NHC update came out with 80 miles per hour and a pressure of 979. They do have it moving nearly due north now, 355 degrees at 12 miles per hour. Anything else we can glean from the public advisory? Just the impacts. Heavy rainfall of 5 to 10 inches with localized amounts of 15 through Texas. Considerable flash and urban flooding, as well as minor to isolated major river flooding, is expected. And heavy rainfall of 3 to 5 inches with locally higher amounts possible for far southeastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, and southern Missouri tonight into Tuesday. A few tornadoes may occur tonight along the upper Texas coast, and several tornadoes are possible today across parts of East Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And of course the storm surge, which will be at its height right now. 4 to 7 feet for Port O'Connor to San Luis Pass, 4 to 7 feet also for Matagorda Bay. San Luis Pass to High Island, 4 to 6 feet. Galveston Bay, 4 to 6 feet. Mesquite Bay to Port O'Connor, 3 to 5 feet. High Island to Sabine Pass, 3 to 5 feet. Now, a little bit of good news there as well is that we were hearing from David yesterday, last evening, that high tide was at about 7 a.m. We were earlier thinking that the landfall would have been at around 5 a.m. Given that it's just a little bit further back, around 4, we're just at sort of the midpoint of the tides right now. The low tide was about 11 p.m. apparently, and so it hasn't struck at high tide, which is good news. Hurricane Altony Bronze says, did they drop the percentage for the AOI in the Atlantic because there was one that had a 10% chance to form? If you're talking about 96L, that is long gone. That was deactivated a few days ago, I think, at least a couple of days ago. And apart from Beryl, there is no systems expected in the Atlantic or East Pacific in the next 7 days. Indeed, on the latest T-Coast, there are no other systems worldwide expected in the next 7 days, although the next T-Coast update will be soon, and we may be seeing a 10% chance being introduced in the Western Pacific. So yeah, as mentioned in the comments there, the tide is around middle right now. If you've just joined us at this hour, Hurricane Beryl has made landfall in Matagorda County. The landfall occurred at about 10 to 4. We finally got the forecast discussion. We still don't have a forecast advisory. I'm really shocked. But the forecast discussion. The strengthening forecast by the regional hurricane models began in earnest just after the last advisory was issued. Doppler radar and Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft data indicated that Beryl regained hurricane strength at around 11 p.m. Central, and intensification continued until the just occurred landfall of the 28 nautical mile wide eye on the Texas coast. The landfall central pressure was near 979 millibars, and the maximum winds were near 70 knots, 80 miles per hour. The initial motion is 355 degrees, which is almost due north at 10 knots, which is 12 miles per hour. Beryl should move northward for the next 12 hours to a break in the subtropical ridge, with the center moving through eastern Texas. After that, the cyclone should turn northeastward with an increase in forward speed, with the cyclone accelerating across the lower Mississippi Valley and into the Ohio Valley until dissipation occurs between 72 and 96 hours. The new forecast track is similar to the previous forecast. Now that Beryl is moving inland, it should quickly weaken, with the system becoming a tropical storm in the next few hours and a tropical depression. That cone's gone wonky, hasn't it? And a tropical depression in a little over 24 hours. After that, the cyclone should merge with a frontal system over the Mississippi Valley and become an extratropical low before it dissipates. Looks like there's some problems at the National Hurricane Center. Their forecast advisory was late, and their cone is neglecting to put on the warnings right now. That's what changed with that cone, but obviously there are still lots of warnings in effect. In fact, that is still completely wrong, that cone, because they're still using the old cone. Yeah, there's something awfully wrong with that cone. They're going to have to change that. It sounds like they've got some kind of problem going on at the Hurricane Center at this point, particularly regarding the storm's forecast. The forecast advisory is finally out. So 80 miles per hour right now, 65 miles per hour in 12 hours, and down to 40 miles per hour in 24 hours, and then down to a tropical depression shortly afterwards, so early tomorrow morning as it moves into Arkansas, and then post-tropical by tomorrow night. So substantial weakening. There we go. That's the proper cone. That's the proper cone with those hurricane force winds out to the right hand side. And that's their new forecast, expecting it to weaken to a storm shortly and to weaken to a tropical depression later on in Arkansas. They still don't have the warnings displayed on that map, but I can tell you the warnings are still in effect for the following areas. Storm surge warning for Mesquite Bay to Sabine Pass, including Matagorda Bay and Galveston Bay. Hurricane warning for the Texas coast from Mesquite Bay northwards of Port Bolivar, and a tropical storm warning from north of Port Bolivar to Sabine Pass. The tropical storm warning on the southern side was discontinued. So that's the forecast, the warnings, and the current appearance of Hurricane Beryl as it swivels inland now. Still part of the eye is still offshore. Bay City has been on the fringe of the eye for a good while. Should be entering it any time. And the center of the hurricane now has made what you might want to call a second landfall, but the eye is now here. Sorry, the center of the eye is now there. So Force 13's schedule, I think we'll be finishing up coverage soon, and we will probably run a tropical weather bulletin this morning at the usual time. The tropical weather bulletin usually gets released at about 7 a.m. We'll also have opportunity to update our automated stream, but we'll probably run until about past, and then we'll probably finish our stream here. But afterwards we'll throw it back to the automated stream, which I didn't have the chance to update this morning overnight, so it still says tropical storm even though it is a hurricane. So when you get redirected to that, it will take a couple of minutes to update first. But certainly we are looking at substantial flooding issues possible for this storm as it moves inland. Again, there is that forecast cone from the 4 a.m. advisory. Weakening expected to ensue. On this screen there should be some more satellite imagery views, but apparently not. Oh, there's some. That's how it's been looking on satellite. Certainly not the most impressive looking hurricane on satellite, but radar certainly looked quite a lot better than that. Live view again from Galveston, still getting very high amounts of rain here. Looks like a vehicle moving along there with sirens, lights, emergency lights moving by. Everyone should be hunkered down there in Galveston right now. The very thick band that we were talking about earlier, just about to reach that area, although it has mellowed a little bit. But we were surprised to see that the National Hurricane Center went with 80 miles per hour at their landfall update. We were thinking it was a little bit higher. Nonetheless, the storm will start weakening very shortly, hopefully straight away, but we can't ever be too sure about that. And from there, we should see it weaken to a tropical storm later on in the morning. So we will stay here until past. Feel free to send in any comments and questions. Whilst we're live here, we're not doing too much else right now. People debating in the chat there about the estimated intensity, and it certainly wasn't a category 2, but there were brief indications that it may have reached 90 miles per hour at about 2 a.m. So Beryl made landfall at 10 to 4 this morning as a strong category 1. Our estimate, winds of 85 miles per hour. How does this compare with other storms in the area? I'm about to tell you. It's still a decent comparison to the hurricane of July 1891, although that ended up moving a little bit further east near Lake Jackson and Freeport, made landfall there in the second week of July with winds of 90 miles per hour. In history, for Matagorda County, they have only ever received 6 hurricane landfalls. Beryl is now the 7th to do so. Probably the best comparison would have been a hurricane that occurred actually in June of 1921, which got to 90 miles per hour, 980 millibars, as it made landfall in virtually exactly the same place as Beryl did, just a tad east of Matagorda itself. Literally the exact same place. So a very good analogue for track in the later part of Beryl, that is, just right now, really. The hurricane of June 1921. In more recent times, of course, Hurricane Nicholas made landfall in Matagorda County as well, in the eastern part of Matagorda Bay. That, of course, being a September storm, category 1. Harvey was on its way out through Matagorda Bay, of course, in 2017 as a category 1. Let me just find out what else hit. Claudette of 2003 was just off the very western tip of the county. That was another category 1 hurricane early in that season as well. That was the 2nd or 3rd week of July. Tropical Storm Faye in 2002 as well. And going back to other hurricanes, I think there was just one other, and I can't find it right now. It must have been a long time ago. Oh yes, 2 very, very old hurricanes. Well, 3 actually. There was a category 3 hurricane in 1945 in late August that was just off the coast of Corpus Christi as a category 3 and did a last minute turn to the northeast. That would have made us tear our hair out, because that almost was literally just a couple of miles off Port Aransas and then turned right and then ended up in Matagorda Bay and Matagorda County as a category 2 landfall, final landfall there. It would have been quite a storm to track. Going way back to 1866, a category 2 made landfall in the southernmost part of the barrier island, Matagorda Peninsula, was moving westwards. And one other, an 1888 hurricane, another June storm as well, peaked at 80-mile-per-hour winds, made landfall in the very eastern part of East Matagorda Bay, was moving northwest at that time. So Beryl in decent company, but the irony is here that more June hurricanes have made landfall than July hurricanes in Matagorda County. Beryl evening the score to 2-2. And also, in terms of the whole of Texas hurricane landfalls, I think it was 10 in June, and now Beryl makes it 11 for July. So, interesting historical stats right there. As we watch Beryl start to move inland, landfall has occurred at 10-4. The centre of the eye now entering that flash flood warning zone. Whilst I got carried away with history there, Maury, any new info on the tornado warnings? Are they gone?
They are gone, yes.
So no tornado warnings active, but possibly
there is a special marine warning for severe thunderstorms capable of producing waterspouts near Port Bolivar. I do see this tiny area of rotation right here that's going to head towards Port Bolivar. But it's very small, so I wouldn't be worried about it at all.
How big is the eye of Beryl? Well, according to the NHC, they said it made landfall with an eye of about 28 miles. Pretty big. Earlier on, it looked like it may have reached 38 miles for a brief period. Harmonica says Beryl had higher winds than pressure most of its track, and now it's the opposite. Category 2 lowest end pressure, but Category 1 winds. And why? Well, I think the large eye will tell you a lot about that. The storm structure is completely different to what it was when it was making its very strong peaks in the Caribbean. It was a very small, concentrated, compact storm. At this point, it is still sort of small in the wide scheme of things, but the eye and the structure is so wide at this point. You know, we don't have an eye wall right in there. And if there was a closed, tight eye wall, we would still be looking at this storm with that pressure. You would probably then be looking at mid-range Cat 2 maybe. But as it is, with the very, very broad eye wall, not a fully closed eye, you still see a few gaps in there now. It's just a slew of strong storms that are being swirled around there in the eye. And that's really what's leading to that very low pressure for its intensity. Even so, it's not actually that low, 979 millibars for 85 miles per hour. That's close to normal. Earlier on, it was a much different wind pressure relationship. We're talking about what was it, 65 miles an hour and 987 earlier yesterday, wasn't it? You know, that's pretty crazy wind pressure relationship. You definitely get a Category 1 normally for that pressure in the Atlantic. So, certainly been an interesting one to track as this powerful hurricane finally makes its final landfall here in Matagorda County, Texas. As mentioned, we will have a tropical weather bulletin at the usual time. For those who are regular with our channel, you'll know that that's at about 7 a.m. Central. And I expect that we will do at least another live update later today, either in the afternoon or evening hours in Texas, at a more reasonable hour for our body clocks, I think, as we continue to watch this storm swirl inland. It's still not moving particularly fast, is it? Let's see if we can get some more questions right now. Is hail still possible to form inside Hurricane Beryl? I mean, not really. Hail can definitely happen in hurricanes at the higher elevations, obviously with the temperatures much colder up there. But of course, given that it is a tropical air mass, you definitely shouldn't really be seeing hail. Let's see if we can do another little parade of camera angles right now then, of the ones that are still available. Let's see what we can see. Let's take a look first of all, of course, at Galveston. Live view, if it's still running. There it is. Still getting a lot of rainfall there. Decrease in visibility. Again, another emergency vehicle going by down there. Indications right now. Oh, we're getting a lot of power outages now. Not quite in Galveston, but there are a few. Galveston, we're at about 2% power outages there. But I'm talking about Matagorda. We're currently at about 75% out in Matagorda County. And in Wharton County, we're about 55% out as well. Brazoria County, about 30% out. And Jackson County, just over 10% out of power. So Matagorda County there, about 75% power outages right now of the areas that are tracked. So big area of power outages. Just cycling through some of our other cameras. This is Rockport. Obviously, the storm won't be hitting there now. Bayou Vista, very close to Galveston. Unfortunately, you can't see much on that camera at all. You may just be able to make out the horizon, but it's really tenuous. We'll have to wait for first light to see anything here. And this is Houston Uptown, where the conditions appear to be getting worse as well. Visibility down, and very heavy rain by the looks of things sweeping through Houston now. In fact, there's a big solid red band that's on its way, about to reach you in Houston. So it looks like it's going to get very messy shortly. There it is. So some serious heavy weather just about to reach you in Houston. Anything of note that you can see in that band, Maury? Around Houston?
Trying to look. That is that band where we had that tornado warning earlier.
Yeah.
To be honest, not really.
And winds aloft in there? What are they getting? Those yellow zones. 33, 36.
Let me just see what that is in miles per hour.
Me too. 82. 80 miles an hour winds at flight level, so
80 mile per hour wind gusts in Houston, or approaching Houston.
At altitude. So really,
At all,
we're
so
probably looking at
like,
maybe some strong tropical storm winds there in Houston, though.
yeah.
Houston is, of course, under a tropical storm warning. They're not quite in a hurricane warning. The next county down is, although the county to its southwest is also only tropical storm warning. I don't know what that county is, but a lot of places under warnings right now. The tropical storm warning, in fact, extends quite far inland, as you would expect, of course.
By the way, that county that you were looking at was Fort Bend County.
Got it. So into Fort Bend County there. Apparently it's getting relatively gusty in Houston, according to another comment there. Do we think one of these major hurricanes this season will hit Galveston Bay?
It's always possible, but I don't know if it'll be that specific location. There might be impacts to that location, but
Harmonica's talking about my accent. I don't understand what you're saying, though, about pronouncing my Sues. I have no idea what that means. Oh, peninsula. Ah. I have no idea. So, why do I and their mate from Australia pronounce it peninsula instead of peninsula? I don't really know. Must be a Anglo thing. Of course, I can turn on a little bit of an Australian accent, but I won't be doing that right now. That'll be something for the Force 13 Sunday event. Looking at the eye here, the western side really starting to fall apart by the looks of things, in the inner reaches at least, as we watch the inner part of the eye continue northwards. But still, I'm most concerned. I mean, you look up north there, some really hefty stuff about to be moving into Houston, but definitely signs here that the storm is quickly going to lose its shape. Hurricane Altony Bronze says, how many landfalls did Beryl make in total? This will be number 3. It depends, though. You could argue anywhere from 3 to 6 landfalls, I think, because it could have made landfall on Cozumel. We're not fully sure. That's 4. I mean, in very loose definitions, the edge of the eye sort of reached Jamaica, but we didn't call that a landfall. And then this landfall here, you could possibly call 2 landfalls because it hit the barrier island and now moving inland on the mainland. So if you're going to be picky about that, you could possibly say that's 2 landfalls as well. Can Beryl hit Western Houston, or is that out of the table? It is going for Western Houston right now. You could easily get some substantial tropical storm force winds later this morning, starting soon with this big band that's about to move through the area. Let's see if we can just check back again. Oh, well, we're still watching. Well, we want to, but I suppose that isn't working right now. But let's just see if we can cut back to that uptown camera in just a sec. But first of all, we're looking at Galveston again. Still getting very high amounts of rain here. So a lot of precip. And now going back to Houston, where we can see all of that as well. Visibility down even further. It's going to get really heavy here in a few minutes by the looks of things, what we can see on radar. If not in winds, then definitely in rains. Well, very impressive, certainly this storm has been. But I think we will be finishing up now for the time being. But we will have more updates on the way. We have a tropical weather bulletin coming up at 7 a.m. That will give you the latest lowdown on Beryl and anything else that's going on in the tropics. But the news is that Beryl made landfall at 3:50 a.m. this morning on the Matagorda Peninsula over East Matagorda Bay and is now moving inland. We think it made landfall with 85 mile per hour winds and a pressure of 979 millibars. The pressure is certainly agreeable. National Hurricane Center, though, kept it just that little bit weaker at 80 miles per hour at landfall. Bit surprising. But I'd like to thank Maury for joining me tonight at a very unreasonable hour for you. But thanks for joining us and giving us some help there with those tornado warnings. We appreciate it. And thanks to all of our team during the whole period of Beryl. It may not be our last live stream yet. We may have another one later, but at this point, I'd like to thank all of the other people who were live with us during the whole period of this storm, and people behind the scenes during our coverage as well. Justin for doing our social media at times, and Live on Tropics for doing a lot of helpful stuff for us as well. and to David Tones, who ran the automated stream the other night because we had a power outage here, and everyone who's been on stream. For the time being, we're finishing up, and hopefully this storm doesn't turn out too bad, but we are still looking at some dangerous conditions on the way, piling inland right now from Beryl throughout southeast Texas. More updates on our social media and our YouTube channel. Subscribe for more. But right now, we'll be redirecting you to our automated feed as we continue to watch Beryl move inland.